I got to quit doing that. I got to add the rest of you because nobody has jumped in. There it is. There's Steve. We're just
Hello.
waiting on our last one. Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode of This Uncanny Earth. I'll take Spider off. He might be doing something. We'll get him in later whenever he gets added back. We have a special guest tonight. We haven't done a guest show in a hot minute, and I've been eager to do more guest shows and get more people in.
Yeah, I'm here. I am here.
Oh, that's right. You don't have a
Yeah, I don't have
so
my replacement webcam yet, so never fear. I am here until I replace either the webcam or the cat.
Yes, his webcam. This is his second webcam that's been ate by a feline. So it comes with the territory. It comes with the territory. Anyways, we have a very special guest tonight. I met this person while doing a presentation for Miss Christine Soltis. Very awesome friend. Love Christine. Very good person. So we happened to get to chatting. And I said, hey, get you on the show. And so we exchanged social media information. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the Gothic Celt. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. And it's great to chat with you again.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. You're very renowned. You do a lot of different things. You do singing, you do a podcast. You really do you run the whole gamut of good stuff.
I try, but you were actually on my podcast, the After Hours Chats podcast, on a very recent episode. So if anybody hasn't checked that out yet, please do. But yeah, my name is Tiffany Apan, and I'm also known as the Gothic Celt, especially musically. And as you said, I do music of the Gothic and Celtic nature. I'm very, very heavily influenced by ancient history, Celtic history, Druidism, all of that. And I'm also very much a history buff. I'm involved in a lot of living history and reenactment. I act in stage and film productions. I almost said stage and theater productions, but that's kind of the same thing. But I do that. And I'm a writer, a storyteller. And as you said, a podcaster. I have 2 podcasts, Bonfires and Castles, which is more history oriented, mixed in with some ancient wisdom. And then my After Hours Chats, that's a little bit more kind of like a free for all, where we get to talk about anything from horror to paranormal stuff. I mean, Robert and I got into a very interesting conversation when he was on about ancient civilizations. Sometimes talk about spirituality, and I also use that as a platform to elevate other and lift up other independent artists as well. So yeah, so I think that about covers everything. But
what I highly respect about you, because there's very few people who are multifaceted. A lot of people in this realm stick to like one specific thing, and then they ride that one specific thing, whether it be Bigfoot, whether that be ghosts, whether that be cryptids. But you're very multifaceted. You have your hand in many pots. So your brain is consistently learning and absorbing.
Yeah.
What was it, though? I do have to say, because the Celtic aspect seems to be one of your favorite works. I would wager like the Druid stuff. And I know a little bit about Druidism. I know, like yourself, I have my hands in multiple pots for research purposes.
Yeah.
What got you started on that? What got you started on the whole Celtic mentality, I should say?
Yeah. So it is part of my heritage. So there's that.
Nice.
I am Irish, Scottish, a little bit English as well. So there's that aspect of it. It's like an ancestral drawing right there. But also, when I was taking singing lessons and voice lessons as a kid, I was studying opera, but when we would take a break, when my voice teacher would want to take a break from opera and all of those more cerebral pieces, we would take a break with singing Celtic music. And I was instantly into it. I mean, I enjoy singing opera. I enjoy singing all different kinds of genres, but just the Celtic just felt the most natural to me. And then I started discovering other Celtic musicians. Lorena McKennitt was my kind of like my gateway drug into, and I still love Lorena. She's the queen, but she was kind of like my introduction into other Celtic artists like Clannad, and and then of course I listened to a lot of Enya. So those were kind of my introductions to that, and it's always just felt very natural for me to sing in that nature, and as far as combining it with kind of like Gothic and rock music, I think it does blend together very well, just because especially if you look at the history of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and those countries, and just how it's kind of, they have this very kind of sad and dark history where they fought and lost a lot. So that just draws me, that and the ancestral thing. So yeah,
I highly respect that. And our very own Spider here, his wife is big into Celtic music as well.
Nice. Yeah.
Yes, she has Irish roots. I have mostly Scottish roots, so we kind of make up with a little bit of English thrown in on my side.
Yeah.
My daughter's favorite band, who she has seen in person numerous times, is Gaelic Storm.
Ooh, yeah.
She has had an arm wrestling match with Mr. Patrick Murphy, and of course he cheated. But regardless, we do have a lot of things in my household that we attach to our Celtic backgrounds and things of that nature. And while I don't have a kilt, I'm just not really built for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We do have a family tartan color, and we've looked into all that. We've done a lot of research into ancestry and things, and we're very kind of connected to that part of the world. And one of these days, I would love to go out to the islands and see both of them, really, and spend a lot of time just kind of investigating. And it's fascinating that they have these, like you said, dark histories,
right?
And yet they're a very, I don't want to say necessarily a happy people, but they can be like Scots and the Irish can be very jovial.
Yes.
And I think that's like a side effect of having this violent history that they've had. They've learned to be adaptable, and they're much warmer people for it, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those things, I think, where it's like you can either allow all of those things that happened throughout your history to consume you and turn you dark, or you can use that as a way to elevate yourself. And not that you won't maybe be affected by it, but maybe you won't need to heal from it in some way, but you find a way to make yourself even more resilient. And I think that that's a lot of where that might come from.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't mean it makes you stronger.
Right. And I think too, dealing with like the weather and dealing with consistent rain and just wars and rival tribes, you're happy for the things that you do have. So it's like, you make the best out of what you have, so that life doesn't seem so gloom, but you put the gloom into the celebration so people know why you're celebrating. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's a very interesting aspect to take on. I have some Irish roots. I have Scottish roots. My main is more Netherlands or Norway, Denmark, Sweden. The more fair-haired, even though I have the Scottish hair, because that's just, that's how things work. So I know bits and pieces of Celtic history. I know about Cernunnos. I was able to make some connections between Cernunnos and a Native American tribe here based on the deer men that were seen here in my own state and the surrounding states. So this is what I'll ask you. What are your thoughts on how, we are both in places that have high supernatural aspects, right? Ohio, Pennsylvania, those surrounding areas, they have a lot of supernatural aspects that a lot of people don't understand. Like Ohio has a lot of mounds. We have a lot of mound history. This is why I'm so deep into giants, because of what was found in those mounds. So the question I have for you is, how how is it, or how does it feel to live in another state where it's deeply entrenched in ancient roots? Like, how does that feel?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I actually really love living where I live in Pennsylvania. In fact, I actually spent my formative years further up north in the Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, Mountaintop, those areas. And let me tell you, I could sense there's just something about that area, like, it's close to the Poconos and just that thick forest. There's just something about that area where, yeah, I'm pretty sensitive to energy, so I can just feel more activity there, even more so than here in Pittsburgh. I mean, there's definitely, it's here in Pittsburgh too, but when I visit there sometimes from time to time, because I do still have some family up there, and I just like to go up there. It's so peaceful, and it's almost, if you've ever been up that way, anybody that's been up that way can agree that's kind of like its own little world, its own little vortex in a way, especially when you venture into the Poconos, because I played a gig in the Poconos a few years ago, and it was in this campsite. The name of the campsite is eluding me at the moment, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And it was just like there were these drum circles, and they had me perform a set, and it was just such a cool, just magical place. And I feel like, in a weird way, I'm supposed to be where I'm at right now. And I like living here. I like all the mystery. I like all of the woods and the forests. And I like to visit the city. But I don't think I could actually live in the middle of the city, if you know what I mean.
I do.
I have to live where there's like some forest and nature trails and places for me to explore. But I really find the lore so fascinating, especially because I had Brian on my show too, and we talked about, we got into Bigfoot, and you go right next door to Ohio, and Ohio, they have their legends too, and then you go down to West Virginia, and of course there's the Mothman, among other things in West Virginia too, because it's not just the Mothman that's down there. But I like living in that, that tri-state area where you have just all this different lore and legends too, just in all of these different monuments and old buildings. And I get a lot of that in living history and getting to do reenactment events at some of these really cool history sites, and many of which have been around since the late 1700s, early 1800s. And I've experienced activity in those places as well, especially when you visit Gettysburg. Gettysburg is full of activity. Yeah.
Do you find that Gettysburg is more full of activity when it's just a smaller group of people than when there's more people? Do you find that in regards to everything, like when there's a smaller group of people, there's more activity, as opposed to when there's more people there at the location?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not saying that there's not anything there when there's large groups of people.
Right.
But with my experience, I have found that with smaller groups, or if I'm just by myself, for some reason or another, they do tend to show themselves, like reveal themselves, show themselves, make themselves heard a lot more. I've spent a good portion of time in like the John Neville House, as well as a few other places. That's not in Gettysburg, but I have visited the Farnsworth Inn at Gettysburg on more than one occasion, and I've stayed at a couple of haunted bed and breakfasts. But I do find that there are definitely certain times of the night, or the early morning, I should say, that there tends to be more activity, especially if you're staying in one of those bed and breakfasts. I don't know if anybody here has, but you'll definitely wake up to more sounds at specific hours, usually between the time of midnight and 4 a.m.
The witching hour.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems to be when the veils are the thinnest. And when I've been inside other historical locations by myself, it's like, sometimes you just hear like the typical, okay, somebody coughing and like there's nobody there. Other times it's like because there've been a couple of times when I was by myself, and I was in this one historical house, and we were actually decorating for their Christmas tours.
Nice.
And I was there by myself. The woman who was on the board of directors, she had left, and I was just just putting some last minute touches. And when I was putting on the last minute touches, and I heard a woman's voice coming from the entrance, and I thought that it was her, that it was the woman who was on the board of directors. And so I went over to, I was like, oh, did you forget something? And there was nobody there. And I went and I stuck my head out to see if anybody was in the parking lot. My car was the only car in the parking lot. So I was like, okay, somebody's here. All right.
No.
The thing about Pennsylvania too, because I grew up there as a kid. I didn't move into Ohio until my early 20s. But Pennsylvania it's a varied state as far as the kinds of history that you find there.
Yeah.
Because you've got the old colonial history with Philadelphia and a lot of that. You have Gettysburg, and there's multiple battlefields around where you have that effect seeping into the soil kind of. But then there's so much forested, mountainous area that people can just walk into and get lost because they don't understand that, hey, it's just a little bit of woods, but you walk in a few hundred feet and you don't know where you walked in from anymore. And it's where I lived was out in the country outside of all the major towns. And when in the middle of the night, you could hear all kinds of things. Like the natural sounds are enough to make you wonder, like, what's out there, what's kind of lurking just a little ways back in the woods. And it kind of gets overlooked compared to places necessarily like West Virginia, where you have so many things going on.
Right.
And then you gets known for, oh yeah, you've got Gettysburg and you've got Bigfoot, but then there's just so much to the state because it's so big and there's so many different facets to it, with both the urban part and the country aspect. And I really enjoy hearing more stories from Pennsylvania because it just reminds me of being a kid and telling some of those stories myself.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. Pennsylvania is a weird state. It's not, Ohio's the weirdest because I live here. Because Ohio runs a little bit different than most states. A lot of the burial mounds from the Native Americans are in the state. Great Serpent Mound, that they later found out was a lot older than they originally thought, because the Native Americans would come through and clean it up, and then they would move along, and that was their job. Like, if you came upon a mound, you were supposed to clean it up, make it look nice out of reverence and respect. And then the Smithsonian comes in and guts most of them and takes most of the giant skeleton bones away. Not the point of the conversation. So for me, being in, like you said, that tri-state area of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio, right? You are, it's what they call the Midwest Bermuda Triangle, as it were. Like certain parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia coalesce into spots that are hotbeds for paranormal activity. And I think that we've just started cracking the shell on all of this stuff, especially when you realize that history can change tomorrow. All they need to do is find a manuscript, or all they need to do is find a papyrus or a papyri, a rock, even something that's just not supposed to be there, out of place 100%. And that's a good point, Stephen.
A spoon.
Something that's out of place, that's not supposed to be there, all of a sudden it's there. Well, now we've generated new questions. And it's not like if you just found a spoon in the woods, like somebody might have been eating
a land bridge,
right? Yeah. But when you start finding these parts and pieces, it starts to create a story and a narrative. And who knows how many towns that existed and were destroyed, came and went. With Ohio, we had a lot of the mining going on. There was a lot of mining going on, and I live sort of in that mining hotspot. Mines everywhere where I live. So having that background history in this state, and Amish folks too. We have so many of those here in Ohio. But I love the fact that our states, because I've been to Pennsylvania too. I've been to Pennsylvania. I mean, obviously I've been to Pennsylvania. I met you in person, but I've been to Pennsylvania at different locations, and it's different. It's not like Ohio. It's not like West Virginia. Each state has its own specific energy. Right. If this makes sense. Like Pennsylvania's energy is not the same as Ohio's, is not the same as West Virginia's. They're all different. And you feel different in each state. You know what I mean? So in each state you go to, you don't feel the same as the state you were in previously. So for me, understanding that, because my family's from West Virginia, like a predominant side, my family saw the Flatwoods Green Monster. Like, I'm related to the people that actually saw the monster itself. It's a very long, I couldn't just call them on the phone and see what they were doing for dinner tomorrow, but I can trace relatives back that far. So for me, it's, because I don't know Pennsylvania like you do. I don't know Pennsylvania like Christine does. And I love every time I come up there, it's like I get educated on something new in Pennsylvania from a person that's in Pennsylvania. They will be like, hey, do you know about this? Well, this happened in 19 such and such. So now that people bring me new information, now I have to go back, look at this information, or sometimes Google it right there on my phone just to start, working the brain. And I love it. Pennsylvania is a cool state. I enjoy it. I enjoy the state. The people are pretty friendly. The drivers, but ours aren't much better. Ours aren't much better. So, what made you want to start singing? Like, what was the driving force? And I don't just mean just Celtic wise, because it seems like you have an appreciation for music as a whole.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people do that go off and sing, especially like Celtic stuff. You have to have an appreciation for music, because that is a very niche group. What made you decide, what, I want to start singing? Because I respect people that sing, and because you're putting your whole self out there. You don't, people that play an instrument, they have an instrument to back them up. You know what I mean? They have an instrument that kind of shields them, from having to push out vocal cords. However, you, and, go check her music out. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
You stepped out there and said, I'm going to sing with my whole voice. What made you decide that, this is something I love doing? What was it? What was that one thing that pushed you into that?
Oh, man. I don't think it's just one thing. I've been a lover of music since I was a baby, it's safe to say. My grandparents were musicians, so I grew up around that, because they had a band when they were first dating, and they continued music throughout their lives. And my grandfather, he was a radio disc jockey for years. Nice. And and I think that's where I also got my penchant for wanting to talk on a podcast too, because my grandfather, he had one of those old-timey sounding radio voices. Nice. That you guys know what we're talking about. I do. Old-timey radio voices, and it's just like, he had one of those. And so I think that's also kind of where I got that from, as far as wanting to talk on like my own podcast and radio shows and everything. But my passion for music, like I said, I've loved music since I was pretty much a baby, and my grandparents fueled that. So I give them all the credit for putting musical instruments in my hand. I was like 4 years old and strumming on my grandfather's guitar, and I started taking piano lessons, and I loved, I love just walking around singing. I would always want to sing. There was a talent show somewhere, I would want to sing.
Nice.
It didn't matter what I was singing. I just wanted to sing. And I've always loved music. I've always been drawn to music. And when it was discovered that I could do more than just carry a tune, I started taking singing lessons and just got to really hone that and hone the more technical part of it too, as well as the emotional part of it. But the technical part of it is very important too, as far as taking care of your voice goes and just learning proper techniques so you don't kill your vocal cords, especially if you're singing for a prolonged period of time. And also it helped me with learning how to sing different styles of music, which is how I can switch from opera to more Celtic music to Gothic rock. And I've dabbled a little bit in other styles of music as well. But those three were my primary. I've done musical theater too. So getting to that point, it was just a fun journey. It's been a fun journey doing that. And I can't really point to one single memory that I have that really made me want to start singing. It's just, it's always been in me, and I give my grandparents credit for honing that for me. So, yeah.
So Missing Time says, was there a singer you really looked up to or still look up to this day?
Ooh, gosh. Yeah, that's a great question. Because there's so many great singers out there that I personally admire, and it's hard to pinpoint just one. But I would say when I was little, I heard the Phantom of the Opera soundtrack for the first time.
Classic.
With Michael Crawford and Sarah Brightman. Yeah, classic. I heard that for the first time, and that had me hooked. So Sarah Brightman as Christine Daae really
fantastic.
Had a huge, huge impact on me.
Fantastic.
And I think I can say that was my earliest hardcore influence, I would say. Sarah Brightman as Christine in Phantom of the Opera, and then it just kind of grew from there. So I have my uncle to thank for that too, for introducing that soundtrack to me. So yeah, but yeah, Sarah Brightman as Christine Daae, I would say, had a huge impact on me when I was little. And then from that point on, my music and my interest in music and singing just really grew from there. So yeah.
That's awesome. I'd have to say Nat King Cole is probably my favorite singer all time. Fantastic. Love the voice. I've seen Phantom of the Opera 3 times in the theater. Yeah, that's right. Everybody out there, Uncanny has some class. Yeah, that's right. I have a little bit of class. A little bit.
There you go.
A little bit of class. So now let's switch gears, because I want to ask you a couple things. Yeah. Where, I'm sure you get the question of, what's the scariest place you investigated? But I'm going to flip this on its head a little bit. Where is the place that you thought nothing was going to absolutely happen, or something, but then it ends up being one of the greatest experiences you've ever had?
As far as paranormal goes?
Yes.
Or
like hauntings?
Oh, okay. I would have to say, oh my gosh, that's a tough question, but I would have to say it would be either the John Neville House in Bridgeville, Pennsylvania, or the Depreciation Lands Museum, where I do a lot of living history stuff.
Okay.
It was, you see, the thing with the John Neville house, it's a very old house. It's been around since the late 1700s, and
for those of us, including myself, because you're giving me new information. Please explain who this gentleman is and the house, please.
Okay, so John Neville, he arrived in Virginia when Pennsylvania was still part of Virginia. So he actually arrived in the Pennsylvania side of Virginia before Pennsylvania officially became Pennsylvania. Because there had been talk before about naming that part of the area after William Penn, but when John Neville was here, I think it was Pennsylvania was still part of Virginia, even though it was kind of its own thing at the time. But when John Neville arrived here, he got married to a woman named Gwendolyn, or Winnie for short. And he, though, would later on become very instrumental in the Whiskey Rebellion of the late 18th century, about 1792. And he was not very favored during the Whiskey Rebellion, because even though he was of the aristocratic class and he was respected, but he was the overseer. He wasn't a tax collector, but he was an overseer for the tax collectors during the Whiskey Rebellion. And at the time of the Whiskey Rebellion, basically they would go into the distilleries, because a lot of the people, they didn't have the money. And it's been a while since I've told this history, so I'm trying to remember everything correctly. But all they really had was whiskey to barter with. And so they were putting a tax on the whiskey. And so the people were not happy, because that was basically their livelihood, the bartering of whiskey for goods and all that stuff. So John Neville was not very well liked during that time. In fact, there was a siege on his home, on his property. In fact, he actually, his main home was up on Bower Hill, which burned to the ground. All of his property burned to the ground, except for the house that we now know as the John Neville house. And that was kind of like a summer home, and it was one that he passed along to his son, Presley. So that's kind of the history behind there. And I mean, and it's a very old place, like I said. And there were generations of family that lived in that house. The Cowan family, Christopher Cowan married into the Neville family, and then there were a couple other generations, and then it wasn't until the 1970s when the entire when the last of the family finally decided to move on and move out of the house, and it was going to be torn down and turned into a McDonald's. But I know, yeah, because that's what we totally need. Yep. But
or a Dollar General, or Dollar General,
or something like that. But the historical society, I think it was the Bridgeville, it was one of the historical societies in that area that actually stepped in and said, no, this is a historical monument. It was very instrumental part of the Whiskey Rebellion. There was a siege on it. It survived the Whiskey Rebellion and all these years. So no, we're going to take it and turn it into a historical monument, which was a really good thing. The thing too, though, is a lot of these historical places are very open to having investigators come, but for some reason, at least at the time, the board of directors of the John Neville House didn't want an paranormal investigation because they had like interested groups want to come and investigate, but for whatever reason they didn't want to. And I was just like, I mean, that people eat that stuff up. I mean, you know,
that's money. That's money.
Yeah, and money's money. You know,
money's money.
You know, to keep these places open. But so like at first they were kind of tight-lipped about it, but when I set foot in there, I was kind of like, I don't know. I kind of feel stuff in here. They're like, oh, no, it's not. No. And I'm like, come on, this is an old house. It's, you know, it's been around since like at least the late 18th century. So, or possibly even, I think it was, the first of it was built during the time of the Revolutionary War. But the times I was in there, it was more of a thing where they kept insisting that there's not a lot of activity, but then other people that worked there would be like, yes, there is, you know? So I don't know if it's necessarily a question of whether or not I thought there would be activity. It was just kind of like one of those things where I guess they at first were trying to keep that hush hush because I guess they didn't want that being the center of it. But really it's like all I had to do was step in there. And now I didn't know to what extent like I would get the activity, but especially when I was by myself, it was like, I think those ghosts like me. Those ghosts really liked me because they would be like, you know, voices coming out of the woodwork and everything, coughing. I would, you know, turn off the battery operated candles. I would go back, the battery operated candle would be back on, and I'd be like, okay, guys, come on, I'm trying to leave here. You know, I can't be leaving anything on. But it was actually a really cool experience being there. And I didn't necessarily, it was one of those things where it's like I didn't necessarily have to use any like tools or anything. It was just one of those things where it's like you feel the energy from the past there. It really is like you've stepped into this portal, this vortex, and you really, I mean, some of these places, these historical places, they're just like wow, well, you know, you just set foot on the property and it's just like, boom, you're hit with all this history and time and energy. Yeah. So
that's how Mansfield is. I don't know if you've been to the Mansfield Reformatory, but that's the same thing because the way the prison system was built on the Kirkbride style that was built to sort of rehabilitate or bring prisoners closer to God. Obviously, it didn't do that as to where now your penal system is more one floor with multiple dorms instead of, you know, tiers with cells. But when you walk into it, or the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum
I've been there. Yeah.
Especially when you get up to that like third or fourth floor where they've redone it to make it in that same style. It's almost like it reinvigorates whatever's there. And I remember being upstairs and you know, I felt something strange. And then come to find out like a horrible tragedy happened there. And I can pick up on that kind of stuff sometimes if I'm like Mansfield was another one. Like it's thick. The air is thick. I can't explain it to you, but it's just thick. Yeah. It's almost hard to breathe because it's just so thick.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, even at one of the haunted attractions that I'm a media ambassador for, Castle Blood in Monessen, Pennsylvania. If you haven't been there, I very highly recommend it. It's inside of a 100-plus-year-old funeral home. They made their haunt in there, which I think is really awesome. And the most recent investigation that I was on, it was held by the Whispering Souls Paranormal Investigation, who I've had on my show, and they're awesome too, and they're very professional, and that's what you want to make sure too. You're with a team of professionals. Yeah. But yeah, I go to Castle Blood all the time. I've done video and photo shoots there, and it's one of those things where it's like I've never felt anything malevolent, even though, it's in a funeral home. There's been, as you can imagine, there's probably been a lot of activity in there, just some sorrow and all of that. But it's one of those things where it's like, I'll go into a part of the haunt, just kind of by myself to do like a photo or a video or something. And I could feel something watching me, but not in this malevolent way. It's more of like oh, who are you? What are you doing? Kind of way, so that was a really cool experience to actually get to see some of the activity there as well. But they said that they've been into the basement, and they said while the upper part of the Castle Blood funeral home that it's inside of, the upper part of it is actually most of the activity there is not malevolent. They're like, if you go into the basement, it's a little bit of a different story. And I'm like, ooh, wow, okay. And nobody's allowed to go into the basement just because it's, it's old and a little too dangerous. So nobody's allowed to go into the basement unless, of course, the investigators, the investigation team, but the general public isn't. So I've never been down to the basement of Castle Blood, but So
with all the breakthroughs that we see in the paranormal community, EMF detectors, spirit boxes, what do you think will be the next big breakthrough in terms of dealing with the paranormal? Like, what do you think is the next logical step in preparation for this? And what do you think it does to the community? So I'll give you, for instance, I think what we're going to start seeing is AI being used to data analyze those recordings. And I feel like that's going to at least skew some numbers, whether that be favorable or unfavorable, is something that I would have to see listening to it myself. Now, a lot of that stuff is just cleaning it up, but the maliciousness is there.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my thing. That's what I see. What do you see being like the next big thing in the paranormal community that says we have some more evidence? Because everybody, myself included, have went into places. I went to Mansfield on an overnight ghost tour. I didn't expect to see anything. I didn't see anything because I knew I wasn't going to see anything. There's too many people. We got 50 to 100 people. You're not going to see anything. It's if you do, you're going to be by yourself in a tucked away corner, and something's going to happen. But in terms of everybody just being there, it's not going to happen. What do you think is that next big breakthrough?
Oh, yeah. I know AI has been kind of sweeping everything, unfortunately. And in some cases, it can make some things better, but in other cases,
of course,
it's one of those things where if used for the wrong purposes and the wrong reasons, it can actually have a very detrimental effect on everything. Because now it's like you can't even watch a video without at least one person being like, this is AI, or read a book and like this is AI. It's like not everything's AI. Okay. A lot of people still do use practical tools and still utilize their natural abilities. Not everything is AI. Although I understand the skepticism. It's like it's almost become like a Where's Waldo kind of thing, where it's like we have to put like, oh my gosh, this is AI. This is AI. It's like the boy that cried wolf almost,
The boy that cried AI.
Yeah, the boy that cried AI. But yeah, that's the thing. And I think, I agree. Some tools might be more AI generated. I know there's this one app called Ghost Tube, I think it's called.
I had it for a while. I used it for a bit. It was cool.
What do you think of it? Like, do you think it actually works?
So I don't buy into it.
Steven's like, no.
I don't personally buy into it, but it was fun. It was fun because then it would say some negative things. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. Everything is coded, the wordplay, all that. So I wasn't. I take everything. I like to think of myself as a skeptic, but a respectable one. Like, I want to know what it is, and I want to go to the ends of the earth to figure it out. If it's like a creaking door, okay, your building's sitting in a way that the door just moves ajar. It's not a ghost. It's the way the building is set. Yeah. So I want to get that out of the way. After that, that's when you get to have all the fun. You get to start doing things and making it happen. So for me, that's what it is. But jumping back on track, it was cool. I mean, it was very it was a very carnival app. It's something if you're around hanging out with your friends and you're like, "Ooh, about to get scared."
Let's do this. Let's like a party game kind of thing. Yeah.
I do think that Randonautica, I don't know if you know what that is.
I've heard of it. I've not used
that one is I've used it a couple times and it's taken me some very strange places. That's all I'll say. I won't get into anything else. So I have to wonder if it's a ghost in the machine type of situation where there's a spiritual essence behind this thing.
Yeah.
Or, because so what Randonautica does is it takes you to a location based on your intuition or what you're thinking about. So and I'm a big proponent of our brains are very powerful, right? Yeah. We don't always, hear these haunted voices. We don't always see things. It's our brain.
Yeah.
And if your senses are deprived, like if you're in a sensory deprivation tank and you can't hear and you can't see, your brain will start making up images for you to see because it has to have something to ground itself to. So a lot of times I think, especially with Randonautica, it's like, okay, my intent. So if my intent is death and it takes me to the graveyard, how much of my brain or the power that I have is put forth into making that a reality? Because I do.
Somebody just said it's led people to bodies.
I've seen that. I've watched videos about that.
Yeah, it has. It's led people to bodies. It's led people into some
mutilations.
Crazy like people's farms and they find these weird things and sigils in the ground. There's been
abandoned places where they find serial killers.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Yeah. But getting back to GhostTube, it's just a fun app. It's not something you should ever take seriously.
Right.
It's just something like, oh, we're gonna scare each other tonight. What do you think, ghost? You know what
like you're at a sleepover. Oh, let's dig out GhostTube and see what it has to say. Yeah.
Put the Ouija board out. Oh, you stop touching it. Yeah, it's that kind of situation. But continue, please. What do you think is that next breakthrough?
Yeah, it's hard to say because on the one hand, I do think that there's still a place for the practical tools like dowsing rods. Like that seems to be where I get the most activity is dowsing rods. Like dowsing rods are my jam. And I do tend to favor the more practical tools myself. I know that there are a couple of apps on your computer that does draw out. It's supposed to draw out the sound of any type of spirits that might be around and wanting to talk. But I think if we're going to go in that direction, we need a way to be discerning and a way to differentiate, okay, what can possibly be corrupted by AI and what's actually legitimate. Just because, when you start to get into spirituality, the paranormal, anything that might be considered woo-woo or whatever to the masses, you really have to fight to maintain credibility. And that's what I respect about Whispering Souls Paranormal is the fact that when they hear a sound, when they hear something, they first try to debunk it first.
Got to. You really have to.
That is how you've got to do it.
That's how you got to do it.
Yeah, that's how you got to do it. And if it means that, okay, you debunk every single thing that you experienced that night, then so be it. If there's a logical explanation for everything that night, then so be it.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. It puts a lot of things to rest that couldn't be put to rest before.
Yes.
And I love the fact you've said that because so many people hear like the slightest thing. They're like, oh my gosh, And I think part of that is showmanship. We have Zach Baggins, we have the Ghost Adventures team, and I'm a sucker for it. I think it was cool.
It's fun.
But I always looked at it in the reality because I've been in similar places as those men.
Yeah.
And to be honest, 90% of your time is standing around talking to thin air.
Pretty much.
Let's be honest. It's not the big sensational of if there's somebody here push me down the stairs, because we want them to get pushed down the stairs. Come on, we want to see that because it's TV.
Yes.
But when you're doing it yourself, you're not asking, you're not saying that, you're not trying to antagonize. You're trying to ascertain what or if is in this situation, whether it be malevolent or harmless. And I think that's key. And you can't do that if every little sound to you is a ghost.
Right.
Every little sound to you is a cryptid, or every pair of eyes in the forest is a creature.
Yeah.
Right? That's not how this works. And I think if we don't do the skeptical aspect first, you're going to be so caught up in the fanatical. You know, I always ask, and I'll ask you this question because I think it's a good one to ask. If you didn't know about something, do you think you would still feel the same way about it? Like if you, let's say the John Neville house, you know absolutely not a thing. You know nothing. Somebody says, yeah, that's just a house. Do you think that not having that prior knowledge, your brain doesn't set itself on a course? So do you think you go in with your brain already expecting that? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts? Because, people can go and don't have that same kind of concept of history. And they just go into a house like, yeah, this is a house. They'll say, no, this is a house. Are they going to get the same things as we get? Because we've already been inundated with it. We know, we've studied history. We've studied life and death. We've studied some of the religious aspects that are part of it, curses, everything else that runs around with that whole system. Does that person experience what we experience, or is some of what we experience more us?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard for me to say, just because I've been this way for as long as I can remember. I've, like I said, just sensitive to energy and everything for as long as I can remember. But I have been on, because even with the one with the one with Whispering Souls Paranormal, because there's a ton of history in the Castle Blood funeral home. And I don't think everybody there was necessarily a history buff. They were just there for a night of fun and they experienced stuff. So I mean, I think that your approach, so the approach might be a little bit different if say I wasn't the history buff that I wasn't studying all of this ancient spirituality and all these other things that I'm into and studying. It might, I might have a different approach to it. I might go in. I mean, I go in with a healthy amount of skepticism, even if I know a place has activity. I will go in with a healthy amount of skepticism that not every bang, not every bump, not every shuffle is going to amount to paranormal activity. I don't know. I can't really imagine.
It's a tough question. It's a tough question.
It is a tough question. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I really cannot imagine being any other way, because like I said, I've been sensitive to this type of energy for as long as I can remember. So I don't think there was ever a time in my life where I wasn't. There was a time in my life when I tried to diminish it a little bit, but that didn't work out very well. So just because, I kind of get a little freaked out, but it's just, but even then, I still felt like I couldn't really deny just
certain places have certain energies.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Right.
So
even if you know nothing about them.
Even if I know nothing about them, now if I know nothing about them, of course, that might have me just kind of going in like kind of going in blind, like, okay, what am I going to expect anything? Is there just going, or is this just going to be a regular house? If I don't expect anything, like if it's just like, if I don't know anything about it, I might just walk into it as if I were just walking into a room, just a normal room, like in my place. There probably would not be that same amount of anticipation. But if something happened and I didn't walk in with that same amount of anticipation, I would probably be even more like, holy crap, than if I were going in with, knowing the history and going in with some anticipation there.
What I wanted to ask is, have you ever had an experience like that where you went to a location where you knew nothing about it and still got a feeling of some sort?
So not necessarily an actual historical place, just because
just
those places you can look up anything. I mean, they have information on their website. There's kind of no escaping that. I would have to say, though, going back to my childhood, I had a childhood friend who lived in, obviously she lived in a house. I had a childhood friend who lived in a house. I was like, wait a minute, what the heck am I talking about? Of course she lived in a house.
I'd hope so.
Yeah, but when I went to her house to sleep over, I wasn't expecting to experience anything, because it wasn't necessarily a particularly old house. It wasn't necessarily on any type of map or anything like that. But in the back of her house, and this is back in Mountaintop, Pennsylvania, in the back of her home, like there were these woods. And
always the woods.
Yes. And me being the kid that I was like, running straight to the woods. I've always loved the woods. And there definitely, I would say I heard what sounded like whispering in the trees. And it wasn't, and at first I, kind of dismissed it as the wind, but the more I listened, the more it sounded almost kind of like chanting. And then there was something that kind of sounded like a drum circle, almost like a Native American.
It was a group of fairies trying to lure you into the forest.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, that could be.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, because you hear about, especially kids, like they try
and they always use the drums.
Oh my God. Oh, that is so true. What if the fairies were trying to take me away?
Yep. I would have went. I'd have been like, let's go. I'm tired.
Yeah, it's like, peace out. I'm going with the fairies.
Deuces.
Yeah.
Deuces.
Yeah, but that is an example that stands out to me of, I was just going to stay overnight at a friend's house, and I was just going to go play in a little bit play in the woods. I mean, not even deep in the woods, just play around the wooded area over there. And I heard these voices and drums, and it was almost, and it was I was like, what is that? But then her mom called us in, so it's so I missed the fairies, I guess. But
you had the chance. I had the
chance. I could be living with the fairies right now, but
it's funny we say this, right? We make these jokes, but what if that's the case in a lot of disappearances?
Yeah.
And the thing is, back in the day, they didn't have social media, they didn't have media, they didn't have phones. Your kid went missing. Well, now you're going to have two more, so one of them can go missing, and then they don't really say anything about it, because who's going to believe your child went missing in the forest?
Yeah, with the
fairies. And not consider foul play.
Yeah, well, because because all of that stuff, like cell phone, social media, I mean, that really didn't even start to actually take full effect until about around 2010. So
yes.
up until that point, yeah, 2000s, it was kind of there, but not to the extent that it is today.
No, not at all.
But, but like up to that point, though, it's almost like, your kid could be going to live with the fairies and you don't know what to do. Oh. So
no, and I always say there's specific times, there's the antediluvian period, there's the after flood, there's the before the Industrial Revolution, when you have a lot of the fae folk and fairy tales were prominent, because fairies aren't just like the winged creatures. It's a broad term for the grouping of these entities, whether good or bad, into one thing. And the post-industrial revolution world has pushed all of that to the fringes of the woods. It's probably mutated it in strange ways. We have a lot of deermen sightings here in the Midwest. We have a lot of dogman sightings. Yeah, and you have to wonder. And this is what I think. It's from a time past. It's from a time that none of us have ever lived, will never live, and it's this time period still. It's that time period hanging on. I think a lot of Bigfoot are those such creatures from just a different time when mankind wasn't so populated upon the earth. So there was, and you have different Native American stories about pole switching and these floods that came through, and so I think it's fascinating to have these kinds of conversations, because if you don't, life is boring. Life is so boring. Like the daily rickamaroo of living is boring. You go to work, you pay bills, you go to bed, right? So if I can, spice that up with some of the unknown, I'm going to do that, every chance I can get. Craig, I said your government name on stream now.
Oh no!
Oh no! The government name. No, we're all busted.
They'll find him.
Spider or Steven, do you have any questions? Some last questions for our guest here before we call it for the night.
That was my last question.
Well, I just want to make a couple of observations, because whenever we have a guest on the show, I always like to do the research and check out their website, and being musicians, I like to listen to their music and everything like that and check all that out. I'm a musician myself, so that kind of stuff really interests me. I want to say that some of your piano playing is very technical, and it's very interesting to watch in the videos that you've posted. I'm not a great player myself. I play keyboards, which is kind of piano, but not exactly. And I don't have the finger dexterity to do some really amazing things. So it was a joy to watch some of the way that you do your melodies.
Thank you.
And I have a comparison. If you haven't heard of this band, and if you have, I'll be both surprised and delighted. Okay. But you reminded me a lot of the singer from a band called Incubus Succubus, which is spelled with K's instead of C's.
Oh, okay.
And I know everybody's thinking, oh no, it's some weird, like,
not
the name. It's not that
I'm the one. I'm the guy that thought it was some weirdness.
I that kind of a band.
I also thought that.
It's a goth band that's not.
It's a kinky thing.
Very rocky, but they have a track. If you look it up, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's called Child of Morpheus.
Oh.
And the singer reminded me a lot of how you perform.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
It reminded me a lot of things that I used to listen to when I was younger. I went through some. I still wear all black and everything, but I didn't really stick with a lot of the Gothic subculture myself.
He doesn't even wear shorts.
I was on the peripheral of all that when I was in school and a little while after that. So I appreciate a lot of that kind of music, and I just wanted to throw that out there for you.
Now I'll have to check out that Incubus Succubus band. Now you have me curious. So
be careful what you look up. That's all.
Definitely.
The letter A instead of the letter C in places of for the spelling of the band, and they don't make, as some people would call, baby making music. They don't do that. That's not the style.
I don't know what that had to do with anything. You're just digging this grave deeper.
I gotta explain myself sometimes because I say things and people.
You didn't have to. That would have been. We would have been perfectly.
You don't
fine.
have
You
my
didn't have to
facial
do that.
expressions to even tell you the right way. You just got my little avatar down here.
Yeah, I know. It makes me sad, but you need to stop having Genghis cat cons that are over there eating your wires.
Yeah, I don't know what he has about wires. He loves them.
Cats you have a kitty cat that eats your wires.
Yes,
he does.
Cover them in orange juice or come in citrus.
Uh-oh.
Pepper spray the wires.
Well,
no. We've got the bitter apple is what we got. The bitter apple.
I want to thank the Celtic Goth herself for coming on the show. Thank you. This was amazing. We could keep going, so you're definitely welcome back. You're definitely welcome back.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Okay, so my website is thegothiccelt.com. That pretty much has all of my links, my social medias, the links to my two podcasts. You can also, though, definitely find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I do have 2 separate channels, one for my After Hours podcast and the other for my Gothic Celt stuff, my music, and my Bonfires and Castles podcast. They have their own page, but my After Hours page is its own thing. But you can find me, like I said, thegothiccelt.com is probably the easiest place to find all my socials and links to my podcast. But you can definitely look me up on Instagram, Tiffany Apan Music. That's my music page. Or if you want to follow both, the Tiffany After Hours podcast on Instagram as well. And they have their own Facebook pages and YouTube channels as well. So that's where you can find me.
Excellent. Well, Tiffany, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's fun
for coming on. I had a blast. I always like learning new things from new people. We're gonna have to get together about this Castle of Blood thing because now I'm curious. I would love to because I've only been to like 2 or 3 paranormal places on an investigation. Mm-hmm. I've never really done a thorough investigation with people. It's just been like kind of slopped together, if that makes sense. Yeah, so being able to do that would be great.
Yeah, also Crawford School of Terror is another one. I have to give them a shout out. Okay. They're in an old turn of the 20th century schoolhouse, and they have their haunted attraction in there too. In fact, they're friends with Castle Blood. So that's one thing that's something that they both have in common is that they have their haunted attraction inside these actually old haunted buildings. So Crawford School of Terror in Connellsville, Pennsylvania, I have to give them a shout out too because they're also awesome and worth checking out. And they also do paranormal investigations at their place too. So yes.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you for watching with us tonight. We'll be back next week for another fantastic episode of This Uncanny Earth. As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you, all you beautiful folks, next week.